Welcome back, Who Dat Nation, and a big win. Look, we always have to celebrate Falcons Hate Week, and I'm not going to talk that I have been around through all the losses because I'll admit, like most of you, I witnessed the demise of Dennis Allen with 5% enjoyment and 95% just, why do I follow this football team? But how can we not celebrate the Rizzlers' first win as a head coach? Darren Rizzi coming through. The number one thing you can tell about this team that was different, swagger. Number one thing you can tell about this team is different, the coach did not play scared. Now, I am not, we'll get this out of the way at the very beginning. I'm not here saying that the New Orleans Saints under Darren Rizzi are going to run the table. I'm not saying they're going to win the division and make the playoffs. I'm not even saying Darren Rizzi has to be the head coach next year. But I am saying that you see from this game what something as simple as changing the coaching staff can do, and having a coach that the players believe in and believe in a culture of coaching. Simple as that. Why do I say that? Because you still are dealing with injuries. You don't have Chris Olave. You don't have Rashid Shaheed. You don't have half your offensive line. You traded away your best defensive player, that some would say is your best defensive player, to the Washington Commanders. And yet, you take on one of the hottest teams in the league, in the Atlanta Falcons, and you whoop them. You win the same way you've always won. Strong defense and just enough from your offense. Offense clearly still needs some love, right? Nobody's going to deny that. Offense missing some big names. But even with that, Alvin Kamara, another 100-plus yardage day. Alvin Kamara has been the staple to keep this thing afloat. Derek Carr looked good today. Didn't look great, but looked good today. Honestly, Derek Carr should have had 3 TDs and over 300 yards, but Alvin Kamara wildly dropped the easiest pass of his career. It's wild. I'm not mad at him. It happens sometimes, I guess. I just never expect AK to drop that type of a pass. But he did. Whatever. Saints still won. Honey Badger coming in close at the very end to seal the game with the late interception. And guys like Peyton Turner having a forced fumble sack. And guys like Chase Young coming in and clutch at the very end of the game to get a huge sack on Kirk Cousins. All leading to Nola winning. You held Kirk Cousins to 0 TDs, 1 interception. You sacked him 3 times. You pressured him all game. And Kirk Cousins, again, has been a hot commodity in the league this year. He has. He has become a very, very good quarterback. Not amazing, not top 3, but he's been very good for them. And yet here we are. So the big thing for me is just how different this team looked, because this team had a confidence in itself. And one more time, to repeat, I'm not saying Darren Rizzi should be the coach forever, but he does have a higher win percentage than Dennis Allen as a head coach, so that has to mean something, right? Shout out to Mr. Phillips there for supporting the channel, as well as Lead with Courage. Do you think Rizzi can get the guys to not be a puppet and get in Mickey's face if needed? Do I think that he can get the guys to get in Mickey's face? No. Now, I don't believe that situation really exists anywhere in the league. Do I believe that Mickey Loomis has become complacent, has issues? Absolutely. 100%. Do I think that Darren Rizzi is going to rally the cries and make that happen? No. And as we saw from reports, it was actually the pushing of Gail Benson to make things happen that got DA fired. That's at least what reports have indicated from people like Nick Underhill, Ross Jackson. We've seen it across through whether it be SI, NFL Network. So with all that in mind, you won. Now, I want to be very clear. This was not a pretty win. We'll take any more win that we can get. But New Orleans offense still went 5 for 13, 38%. A lot of that being second half, just simply could not move the ball compared to the first half. They only had 14 first downs, period. Offensively, still way too many issues to think that this team is going to run a table or look crazy. But you did manage to turn into a 3-7 That's an improvement. And we do know that the second half of this season always looked, quote unquote, the easiest on paper. We'll see what this is going to be like without guys like Marshawn Lattimore on defense, without guys like the offense. And by the way, Eric McCoy hopefully coming back soon, hopefully getting the entire offensive line back again, hopefully. We'll see what things look like. We don't know if Chris Olave is going to come back and play with this team this year. Probably not, if reports are to be believed. Maybe you get some people back who can be successful, even guys like Kendre Miller, because you could tell that the offense needed an extra spark behind Alvin Kamara. And Mims had a couple of decent runs, but I don't think Mims is that guy. I think Kendre Miller is that guy. But all the words that I am saying do not provide enough to what really matters. And that's that the Saints whooped up on the Falcons in the Dome. You got to be able to be happy. You got to enjoy beating the Atlanta Falcons. And if you followed this podcast for a long time, you know that I've had one goal. One. Every season, no matter what the look for the Saints is, my number one goal is always to beat the Atlanta Falcons. That is number one, and I will take it. Let's move it on to y'all. Look, normally we do quarter by quarter updates, things like that, but I want to open up the floor. One, I haven't been here in a while. Two, Saints just beat the Atlanta Falcons. And I know some of our younger fans, it's kind of bewildering for me to see a lot of the younger fans talking about, Tampa being more of a rival to them. For me, it's always the Atlanta Falcons. It will always be the Atlanta Falcons. And I think games like this show why. Because it was a fight the entire match against a team. I'm just saying this to be honest, guys. The Atlanta Falcons right now are a better team than the New Orleans Saints. I'm just saying. I'm not trying to sound like a Saints hater. The Atlanta Falcons are a better team. They just weren't a better team today. And I'll take it. We'll absolutely take it. And I'm not mad about it at all. So, good to see everybody in the chat, by the way. Nicholas says, oh, well, hold on. Let me see. Godfather said, been saying forever, get rid of Loomis and DA. Look, I think Loomis has been, it's tough to get rid of Loomis because essentially for 25 years now, he has been, the main catalyst in the front office for why the Saints are winning. Now, that isn't to say that you shouldn't move on. Just, I see why it's hard, right? It's the same way it's if you're New England, it's hard to move on from Bill Belichick. It's hard to move on from Mickey Loomis. Every win the New Orleans Saints have ever experienced in the playoffs has come under Mickey Loomis's tenure. Every successful season has basically come under Mickey Loomis. Yes, the Jim Moore years exist. I know they do. Great defenses. They played against the 49ers. You can never really win the division. Yeah, you had a couple of championships there in terms of divisional championships, but you didn't have a lot of success. That was our glory days talking about the New Orleans Saints past were literally teams that couldn't win the playoffs and barely made it there if they did. Most of your success as a franchise has come under Loomis. So I get that. It's just one of those, it's hard to move on. I do think that a time has really arrived for the Saints to consider that. And honestly, y'all have heard me on the podcast say that as well. That, look, you love Loomis, but move him up to like just president. Keep him around if you want to, but you do need some freshness. And I said this on Twitter a couple of weeks ago. Or actually, it wasn't even a couple of weeks ago, but I went on my profile. So I'll put this on the screen just so we know we're talking about who said it. I said this. Let me see if I can find it. Going back. Let's see. It's been a few days. Shout out to the Monroe Moccasins. It's a local hockey team. But November 6th, so 4 days ago, I said this. Early hot take. Let Darren Rizzi run as head coach through next year. Keep Clint Kubiak. I think y'all saw enough from Clint Kubiak today to remind you, oh, yeah, he actually can run an offense when, there's not a DA down his throat saying don't pull things. Again, not saying Clint Kubiak is perfect, but I would have Phil Galliano be the special teams coordinator long term and then find a new DC to replace Woods. I just am ready to move on from the DA tree, as it were. But that's just what I said. Now, it's 1 week, and 1 week makes me look like a genius. The first 2 weeks also made me look like a genius when it came to me wanting to pick Clint Kubiak. And obviously, we are 10 games later going, well, Rev, maybe we weren't right. I think Clint Kubiak is what he is. He needs a great leader and a head coach, and he needs a healthy team to have success. And that just is what it is. But more importantly, you're winning football games. Winning. And I think this game shows the culture of a locker room is created by the head coach, and that is so important. The best way I've seen it described is on Twitter today, or X today, where I talked about, look, I love DA as a defensive coordinator, but I never believed him as a leader of men. And the best way I've seen that described was a reply made to me, and that's you could tell that DA is a lieutenant and not a general. And that's kind of how it is. I believe that Rizzi is a general. Now, whether you end up running with him, remember, there aren't many special teams guys that become head coaches. There's one that all of you should be able to name, and then probably y'all are going to be like, ain't got anybody else. Number one, Harbaugh. Now, name another one that's become a head coach and has success. Go ahead. Now, I'm not saying that Darren Rizzi shouldn't be considered, just that it is not very common for a special teams coach to become an HC and provide success to a team. It can happen. But what is the thing that those guys have when it does happen? They are great leaders of men. They're generals. And I think Rizzi has that. I'm not saying that Rizzi is the answer long term, but I am saying that this team has needed a general in the head coaching spot since Peyton left. And they haven't had that. I'm excited to see what happens the rest of the year. Obviously, Rizzi's going to be your interim coach. And since he's got half a season, maybe the leadership's enough. Maybe they reach the end of the year going, hey, you're a great leader, but We don't believe that that's enough to win. We'll see when the offseason gets here. But if nothing else, this one game should tell you and show you how much culture in the locker room matters, how much having a general at head coach matters. I think it does. But back to the chat. Let's see what else is being said. Richard says, I like Rizzi. I think he could be a good coach. Maybe. And again, I don't want to take one game and be like, that's your guy. But I will say the defense, well, it was defensing. It was doing some defensing. You managed to win the turnover battle. That's rare. Haven't seen that in a while. You managed to actually get 3 sacks. Cameron Jordan came out and thought Kirk Cousins was actually Matt Ryan and picked up a sack. That was unexpected. Peyton Turner, of all people, getting a sack fumble. There's a culture that impacts some of that. Now, individual players have to play. But that's how it goes. Now, Big Willie says just don't win too much. Look, strong disagree with that one. But y'all know that's just me. You'll never, ever, ever catch refs saying tank. I'm sorry. And I actually mentioned this with Ryan. Shout out to Ryan with another one of our Saints podcasts out there. Actually really do like no music, no intro. Look, you're never going to catch me rooting for the Saints to lose. And I don't really give a rat's bahonky about draft pick status. I just don't. You're coming into this game, I think the Saints were slated to be like the 3rd overall pick. I honestly could give a flying pig tail. I do not care. I'd rather the Saints win every week. Now, if they naturally just suck so bad, they get the number 1 pick or the number 3, fine. If you wanted the number 3 pick, you know what you should have done? Kept Dennis Allen. Simple answer. If you wanted to get the number 3 pick, you should have let Dennis Allen be the head coach. When you make a change, making a change says we want to be better, and we want to win, and we want to give the fans wins. Because most fans are going to say they'd much rather have a win than have a top draft pick. So here we are. If you wanted to have a top draft pick, you should have hoped and prayed that DA stayed coach for the entirety of the season. Because that ain't going to happen. I'm sorry. This team, if it believes in themselves, will win probably half of the rest of their games. Maybe they only win 3 more. But they're now 3-7. There's 7 games left. It's not hard to envision them winning 3 or 4 of those games. Just like it's not been hard to envision them winning 3 or 4 of those games the entire time. It's not like I'm jumping on the bandwagon now. The team's talent has been there. It's just been circumstances that have led to that 7 in a row losing. But look who you got left. You got Cleveland at home. You got a Rams team that's not the Super Bowl Rams team at home. You got to go to New York and play the Giants. Then you play the Commanders. Let's see if Lattimore's healthy for that one. That'll be a fun matchup. Green Bay, Raiders, Bucks. That's winnable games. Now, will they win all those? No, they could lose they could lose 7 more in a row. It could happen. But I'm just telling you, if you wanted to have a top draft pick, you should have kept DA. So, Antonio says they would have to sit Carr to get a top 5 pick. Can't believe I'm saying that. They would. Look, I know there are a lot of people who are excited about Rattler and his future, and I do want to see him develop, but Rattler is nowhere near the quarterback Derek Carr is right now. That doesn't mean that Rattler cannot be developed into a great quarterback. I'm not saying that. But neither Haener nor Rattler are as good as Derek Carr right now. That's just, you'd expect a 10-year veteran to be better than a rookie and a guy who is second year who got sat behind the rookie. It just is what it is. Now, if you wanted to make that argument, sure. And let's just be real. If the Saints lost to the Falcons, picked up an 8th in a row under Darren Rizzi, etc., after the bye week, you probably do consider starting of these young guys. That probably would have been the thing. But now you're winning. Well, what happens now? Well, if you win this one and then you manage to win next week against Cleveland, go in the bye week with 2 wins, you're definitely playing as if you have a chance. Remember, the wild card is not out of reach. Not that I'm trying to get your hopes up. I'm telling you what the franchise is going to look at. The franchise is going to say, do we have a shot? The answer is simple. They do. Do they have a good shot? No, they do not at all. But do they have a shot? As a franchise, the only thing they're going to care about is winning. That's it. And if they have a chance to make the wild card, they're going to push for it. I don't think that's going to happen at all. But here we are. Crazy times to be living in. I'm just celebrating the fact that the New Orleans Saints beat the Atlanta Falcons, and that just makes me happy, chummy, and just without a care. It is one of the best days I've had in a while, and I'm happy, and hopefully you are too. Who dat and God bless to everybody here. Hopefully y'all are. Derek says, first win over a team over 500, and I don't know how long. It has been a while, and this is why it's so important to discuss. Because the Atlanta Falcons, and I know we don't like to give them credit, The Atlanta Falcons have been one of the better teams in the NFL this year. I mean, they're coming off beating Tampa to really secure the division, and then they beat Dallas. Now, I know New Orleans beat Dallas, but they also beat Philly at the beginning of the year. You know, even when they've lost, they haven't had huge losses. Like, for example, you take a look at Kansas City losing by 5 points. That's not a huge loss. They did lose by 20 to Seattle, but generally speaking, this team has played very competitive. I would say that they've been one of the best teams in the league, enough to, dominate the conference, or I'm sorry, dominate the division. Sure, helps you playing Carolina and New Orleans. Not the point. You've played tough. You've won. Now, as you look at the standings for where the New Orleans Saints could end up finishing, they're on the right side of your screen. You look around the league, this is not a conference that's overwhelmingly dominant, right? Especially when you talk about the NFC West. Again, I talked about having to play the Rams, who are a 500 ball club right now. If you're looking at this from New Orleans' perspective, they're going to want to play to win. They're going to want to play to not throw Rattler out there. Now, you've had some no-name people come out and manage a victory today that you didn't expect. Who thought MVS was going to be the MVP? I didn't. Came out of nowhere. Love it. He's replacing that Rashid Shaheed role that this team desperately needs. I mean, you got a guy who literally hasn't played football in years coming in and having a couple of receptions. You take what you can get. You also got some help. How about Younghoe Koo, one of the most reliable kickers in the NFL, going 1 for 4? You had to have things fall into place. However the wins come, you take them, you celebrate them, and that's what I'm doing today. Celebrating Falcons Hate Week with a W. It's a good day. It is a good day. Danny says, I've never seen Younghoe Koo perform that bad. It was long overdue, and I agree. I don't think that he's had a single game that he's played that poorly. And I say that as, honestly, I think that he's probably the best kicker in the conference. Debatable in the league in terms of the past few years' consistency. I think Younghoe Koo has been great. We can actually go to PFR and take a look at Younghoe Koo and just see a guy that has been dominant. I mean, look at his field goal percentages. Pretty consistent for years now, and he only typically misses long ones. Look at here, where he's missed 2 from 50-plus. Last year, missed 3 from 50-plus. So this is a guy that might have a lower kick percentage than other kickers, but it's because of where he's kicking. Look at the beginning here. 10 out of 10 last year, 20 to 29. 10 out of 10, 30 to 39. Even this year, he was perfect until today. This is one of the better kickers in the league, not performing up to snuff. Doesn't matter what the reason is. I will take it. Demario Davis having a good day today. Ugo Amadi coming through, helping, a beleaguered secondary. But one of the things we talked about coming into 2024 was that New Orleans Saints had a great secondary room in terms of depth. You saw that today, even with guys that you're not used to seeing. Because, you don't have, Kool-Aid McKinstry here. You don't have Paulson Adebo. And yet, even with guys like Jean-Charles and Alontae Taylor, you're still finding enough to win. That is crazy, unexpected, but exciting. Exciting. So, Antonio says it would have been nice to see Kendrake come in for AK. Yeah, that was, if y'all missed that story, one of the things that they've talked about this past week, and Rizzi said he disagreed with, is they didn't feel like Miller had to go on IR. He's supposedly ready to go now and has been for a couple of weeks, yet DA put him on IR. So, You look at even the decision-making processes where they talked about how Darren Rizzi was handling a lot of the game day stuff and prep for Dennis Allen to begin with. We'll see what this team looks like. Again, you got to go play Cleveland. And Cleveland has been a team that is also on a downswing. For those that have not kept up with Cleveland, I have honestly been rooting for them a little bit. Why have I been rooting for Cleveland? Well, his name is Jameis Winston. That's why I've been rooting for Cleveland. But if we go to the schedule, see what you have to do to prepare there. You're looking at the Cleveland Browns team not being a good team, where right now sitting on a bye, next week coming into play New Orleans, and it's a team that hasn't played well. Now, they did have that really awesome win against Baltimore for those that missed it, and yes, Jameis Winston had a fantastic game. 3 TDs, 300-plus yards, 66%, no interceptions. But is that something you can consistently rely on? Probably not when it comes to New Orleans. And if you take a look at how he performed the past week. So take a look at this last week. We find Cleveland real quick here on the board. Where is Cleveland? I am blind because I don't see Cleveland anywhere. Okay. Where is the Browns? Where are they? There they are, finally. my blind eyes see him. You see, Winston did not have the same level of success against the Chargers, throwing 3 interceptions, 1 TD, 235 yards. So you will have kind of a rematch there, if you will. But overall, I'm just happy the New Orleans Saints pulled out a W against the division rival that I hate the most. And I'll take that for what it is and for what it's worth. Billy Ellis, you're going to see this. We ended the Falcons hate week with a win, so it was a good day. Amen to that. Do you think they bring Adebo back next year? So I hate to say this because I'd never root for an injury, but the injury might have brought Adebo's price tag low enough to justify bringing Adebo back because he's not going to have a full season. And obviously players and coaches are aware of his penalty issues, for example. Is possible. Is it a guaranteed? No, but it is possible. They bring him back on something cheap, like a 1-year deal, or maybe they give him one of those phantom extensions with 3 phantom years. Remember that New Orleans is in their traditional super negative cap situation, and they made it a little bit harder because a lot of the negative cap they're going to eat this next year, there is no way to extend it. Take Lattimore. They're going to have a big, Lattimore, cap number sitting there next year. That thankfully it goes away after that, but you can't extend him. You can't phantom year it. He's gone. He's on another team. So you're going to have to eat some big numbers that normally they can finagle, they can move the money around, but not when you literally trade away the player. You're just going to have to sit on that for a year, and then you'll be free of it. So as far as New Orleans goes, this is going to be a tougher offseason. We always talk that it is possible for them to manipulate the cap. And there are still ways to manipulate the cap if they want to make moves this upcoming offseason, but it will be harder to the point that I'm going to say don't do it. Yes, draft well. Yes, sign what you can, but don't try to move around the cap to make big signings. Simply make a competitive team and see what happens. I know that might not be the best thing people want to hear, but I do think it's about time that when you set yourself up in this situation, go ahead and eat those numbers and see what happens. Now, Paul says, no, the Saints aren't back. It's the juice from the coaching swap. But if your argument is that, and I don't disagree with it, the main thing they've missed all year has been coaching. So if the juice is better coaching and invigoration and better culture, well, then, yeah, they very well can win more games. Again, when I say back, be very clear. Back means they're not losing 7 games in a row to end the season. Of their remaining games, Browns, Rams, Giants, Commanders, Packers, Raiders, Bucks, of those 7, I think they could easily win 3 to 4 of those games if they're playing as a team that is cohesive, a unit, and believes in itself. This is not a schedule of hard games, as in you're not going against the league's best. Doesn't mean they're going to win. Hell, they could maybe not win another game the rest of the year. Absolutely possible. So all those wanting their high draft picks, it's possible. But if we're just being honest, this is not winning football teams for the most part. Do you have a couple of winning teams? Sure. But generally speaking, this is a easy schedule. Tampa Bay's a losing team. Rams are a 500 team, probably going to be a losing team. We'll see what it looks like by the time we get there in December. New York is not a strong winning team. The Raiders are not a strong winning team. New Orleans has opportunity there. Again, not saying New Orleans is running the table. I'm not telling you playoffs. Green Bay, tough. But everybody else, meh. I'm not the biggest believer in Washington, but I don't think we're going to win that. Even if I took those 2 away, that still leaves teams, again, like Tampa, like Las Vegas, who has the same record you do, or coming into this game have the same record. The Browns, same record as you do coming into this game. I think New Orleans can win 3 or 4 of those games, which means your draft pick hopes are probably going to get ruined a little bit, but there you are. Regardless, I'm excited that the Saints won this game. That's what matters the most to me. I love this team. I love it when they manage to pull out a win. Don't think that there's any type of hope for playoffs, but when you can actually see them believing and fighting for each other, which is what you saw today, that makes me happy. That makes me excited. It means there's life there. So that's all that really matters. I'll be honest. I hate to just kind of end it there, but truthfully, that's what matters to me. The New Orleans Saints won. New Orleans Saints showed they had enough. They showed they had heart, spirit. They still were here. They're not willing to wrap it up and just go home. And I'll take it, man. Look, don't want to take up too much of y'all's time. Y'all go celebrate and have a great time. Who dat? God bless. We'll see you, and heck, maybe we'll even do a film study. Who even knows? Love you. Appreciate every single one of you. Enjoy the week. Enjoy the win. I'll see you on the next one. That's it. We're out.